Welcome everybody to The Passion Within. We've got a very special guest with us today, Annaliese Kibler, who actually has a BS and a master's in plant biotechnology. And she is a cannabis advocate and has been for 20 plus years. And she really helps support the community of growers and especially the ladies in the industry. Annaliese, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So instead of me trying to say, okay, well, you do this, this, and this, how about Annaliese tells us a little bit about who she is and what she's doing now?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a cannabis consumer since I was a young teenager. Always loved plants. And so I took plant biotechnology and plant agriculture at the University of Guelph. And actually my master's was in medicinal plants. So working with plants like St. John's wort and holy basil and echinacea, and other medicinal herbs and plants. I was super fortunate in that lab because all of us who were into medicinal plants were also into smoking weed. And so, and I was actually graduating from my master's program in 2014, right before the MMPR was kind of launched here in Canada. So when I finished my master's, I applied all over Canada to try and work for a up-and-coming cannabis LP. And I actually got a job out in BC working for a licensed producer doing, scientific research, quality assurance, facility setup and licensing, and anything else that needed to be done, harvesting, growing plants, setting up production lines, anything that needed to happen.
And you're excellent at that, of course.
Yeah. And it was really a great way to explore all the aspects. Those individuals came from a legacy grower and they were transitioning to legal. And so learning a lot more about that transition for those people and what that meant. And then in 2015, I actually got to meet a bunch of wonderful women through Women Grow Vancouver that was starting that year. And I volunteered to become a co-chair of there. And through that, met so many amazing women in the space who had been, producing products, growing, in the legacy space. And they were interested in figuring out how to, what was coming, what was, we were hearing conversations around legalization and what would that look like. And actually in 2015, I also started working at Aurora. And I started managing the client care department that was just opening up. So I spent the first 2 years at Aurora just working directly with the patients. So we went from 0 to 20,000 patients in 2 years, talking to them every day, listening to their concerns, problems, benefits, their wonderful stories about using cannabis and the changes that produced for them. And I really started to think more about my own cannabis consumption and how, I might have only looked at it from a recreational perspective, but then really starting to dive deeper into, wow, maybe I was actually using this medicinally, but I wasn't conscious of that decision. And, really getting a better perspective holistically around the medical use of cannabis and who was using it and why, and the range of reasons people were using it and how they were finding it benefit them. I
think anybody that actually uses cannabis, whether they think they're just using it to get high, they're medicating. They just don't quite understand it at that young age where, when you start feeling the aches and pains and you don't have it for a couple of days, you're going, oh man, I don't have that when I'm, consuming. So maybe it is medical for me too.
Yeah. And I think like my nephew is in his 20s, and he's a consumer, and you know, I've been talking with him about his consumption, and you know,
Yeah,
as you start kind of digging deeper into like, when do you like to, why do you like to, it's like, oh, it's a mental health thing, it's an anxiety thing, it's a, you know, it's all these other things that maybe they um did not actually, you know, they're not acknowledging it, they're not conscious of it, but
yeah,
subconsciously that's why they're gravitating towards cannabis and gravitating towards the medicine,
yeah,
even if they're not aware of that's why they're doing it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, you know, that first 2 years at Aurora was like a crash course in medical cannabis access and patient advocacy and patient access
Mhm.
issues. And, you know, and then in 2017 at Aurora, I started working in the regulatory affairs realm, which was also product development because they were so
Yep.
closely hand in hand as we were transitioning into legalization,
Mhm.
because the regulations really dictated what legalization was going to look like. So then I started transitioning into product development, which was really exciting to see how we were transitioning, you know, skills and techniques and products that we would see in, say, the legacy market that wasn't available legally yet, and
Yeah.
seeing how they needed to transition and meet the requirements and meet the regulations that Health Canada puts in place to transition those products in. And I've been doing regulatory for Aurora for the last 5 years or so.
Mhm.
So now I'm the director of regulatory there. I cover international and domestic. You know, I've probably licensed about 22 licenses at one time I had to manage just here in Canada alone. And doing everything from like the marketing and product development to, you know, financial regulatory and international regulatory, which is actually really interesting and exciting, and it's complicated in its own way.
And I think of that and I'm going, oh man, what a headache. Oh, I don't think I could do that. You're amazing because you have such an overall grasp of the industry, both on the legacy side and on the legal side. And then, you know, when it was the medical side and it was just that, you know, you got that knowledge and being able to work with the patient, saw how valuable this plant can really be. You know, when you're talking about, you know, licensing so many licenses, are you talking about, like, say, somebody like me that, you know, has the availability of space and starts a micro grow and falls under Aurora and grows for Aurora? Is that how, you know, how do you get that many licenses?
Yeah, well, Aurora acquired a lot of companies throughout the
Hmm.
years, and
Okay.
so I kept on collecting licenses. So, you know, between standard cultivation, standard processing, research licenses, analytical testing licenses, um, you know, sale for medical purposes, and all of the different types of license,
Okay.
Health Canada grants to companies. I
Hmm.
do personally have my ACMPR to grow my own medicine at home.
Yep.
I
Me
also
too.
personally have, like, I have a 7-acre farm that has a hemp license. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. But, you know, my yeah, just the variety of licenses we held under Aurora
Hmm.
at different locations, um, you know, and going through that process with Health Canada, you know, it's very um it's a patience is a virtue. You know, but I'm really fortunate to have gone through all the, like, starting from day one, April 1st, 2020 or 2014 to today, and see the like grow and the transition of the regulations and how they've
Hmm.
evolved over the years. And that evolution really kind of shows us where we are today in Canada, at least when it comes
Yeah.
to legal cannabis, whether it's recreational or medicinal, and why things are the way that they are.
So, you know, we know we have a lot of problems with how the regulations are set up, but do you see anything coming that's going to make it more easy for a medical patient to access a high quality cannabis?
Yeah, I know. So I do some volunteer work with
Mhm.
Medical Cannabis Council, which
Yeah.
is a group here in Canada from for patients by patients, doing advocacy work for the medical cannabis community. And I know they just came out with in alignment with some universities, a really great paper that it's a medical cannabis patient survey, and
Okay.
it talks a lot about where medical patients want to see changes
Mhm.
in Canada for access. A really good point that really stuck out to me was, I think something like 40 some odd percent had medical coverage, but only 9% of that group could actually figure out how to get that coverage to cover their medical cannabis, right? So there's a lot, there in terms of helping medical patients get better
Mhm.
access, more visibility in access. I think personally, I would like to see medical cannabis in Canada maybe deter a little bit in terms of product selection.
Mhm.
If you have the oversight of a doctor, there should be opportunities to get higher dose products, um, and higher dose ingestibles,
Mhm.
because that's a typical format for a medical patient to use.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of change, we know statutory reviews on right now,
Mhm.
which is a government mandated review of the cannabis regulations here in Canada. And they've developed an expert panel, which is very medically focused individuals, who are looking at the regulations holistically, listening to patients, to advocacy groups, to licensed producers, and looking at where there's opportunity for change, because the regulations were written, in Canada quite rushed. you know
Just a little. Yeah, just a
yeah,
little.
like it was fast, and like, which is
Thrown
really
together.
really impressive,
Yeah.
actually. But they could be refined in a lot of
Mhm.
ways to
Yes.
better reflect how things have panned out,
Mhm.
right? And what opportunities there are to grow our industry here in Canada, both medicinally and recreationally, or for the adult use
Yeah.
market.
Yeah. Well, Lily has Silly Lily has a good point here. I hope the doctors get trained on cannabis, and like I know
Yeah,
that we both know a wonderful young lady who's actually
yeah.
going to be on the show, the cannabis nurse, and Kayla has developed the chorus for nurses. I wonder if the doctors shouldn't take that course too, so they have a better understanding.
Yeah, and like I love that it's a nurse program. You know, because nurse practitioners can also prescribe medical cannabis to patients
Okay.
as well. And we find nurses are probably in the healthcare system the person that's probably spending more time actually with the patient than
Oh
maybe
yeah.
the doctor is,
Yeah.
right? In a typical any type of visit to the doctor, right? You're spending a bit more time with the nurse, and the doctor is really just coming in and validating a lot of the things, right? And so if a nurse has the ability to prescribe a medical document to a patient, then that's a really great avenue. I know Cal is also in, I think, Colorado this week, going to a cannabis nurse summit, which is
Cool.
fantastic in the States, talking about her course and how
Mhm.
that education is so important. And I
Yeah.
think too, you know, I think one of the things that really limits that education piece is the limiting opportunities for research in cannabis in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, the research license process, while available, is still quite conservative,
Mhm.
in terms of doing clinical trial work with
Mhm.
medical cannabis products, and are typically pretty limited. And I think that's where cannabis becomes very challenging for doctors to understand, is like all the different strains, all the different formats, all the different combinations of all the things that we want in our cannabis. We want, you know, all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes. We don't typically want just like one ingredient, right? And that becomes really difficult when you try and fit that into clinical trial or other
Yeah.
kind of traditional research formats, right? So,
Well, then the endocannabinoid for each individual person is so different, and the effect of the plant and the different terpene profiles from different strains is so different. You know, it's really hard to do anything because a clinical trial is really a generalization of something, a substance that a person is consuming, and cannabis really has a wide range of effects per individual.
and also like some of the main reasons people are using it, chronic pain, anxiety, mental health, even in the traditional medical field, those are hard things to study, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they're like, even with traditional pharmaceutical drugs or whatever, those are hard things to study in general, just because there's so many factors that play into why those are happening, right? And I prescribe to a more Eastern medicine style for my personal health. I practice
Yeah.
Ayurvedic medicine. I practice traditional Chinese medicine. And, I apply those philosophies to cannabis when I consume, and that really, really, I think it fits a bit better, right, for my
Yes.
personal use. So, for example, I will, um, I have like a catalog of cannabis on my shelf. I smell them. Whatever one smells the best that day, that's the one I consume, because that's my body telling me what I need. And that's, trying to
Precisely.
teach people that way when they're not used to that kind of philosophy
Mindset.
around their medicine and
Yeah.
philosophy around listening to their body. That can be really overwhelming. And that makes it very difficult for new consumers. They want to know exactly how much to take and when and what. And, that's where CALA's program becomes really good, because it really, is starts with very basic titrations and very basic product formats and things to help you
Yeah.
start learning your personal response to cannabis and how it's different than, the next person.
Well, and then its consumption method is, are you consuming it by smoking it? Are you eating it? Because then it's going through the liver, and there's so
Yeah.
many variables. And is it Kayla or Kate? Or how are you pronouncing her name?
I say Kala. Could be
Okay.
Kayla.
I'm not sure. I think it's Kayla.
Sorry, Kala.
Oh, we love her, and that's the main thing. And she is really helping the industry as a whole and the
Yeah.
patients. And like I'm a medical patient, and for my consumption method is going to be so much different. But speaking of consumption and smoking, you were talking, we were at High Tea together. For anybody that doesn't know, Blunts and Beans did an amazing job putting on a high tea at Pine Lake. But we were talking about a little machine where you don't have to roll. I'd like to see that. No, not allowed.
Oh, I can go grab it, but I can link it in a chat or whatever. But it is called the
Please.
Banana Rose Auto. I never really learned how to roll. I didn't have
Yeah.
to. And I love my blunts. That's my
Yep.
preferred method of consumption, is blunts. So yeah, it's just like you put a blunt cone in, like already
Mm-hmm.
spun up, and then it's like a mechanical grinder that just fills the cone up for you, and you just press a button, and in a few minutes you have your own cone, you have your own blunt. Which
Yeah.
I really like, because I have papers that I like,
Mm-hmm.
and blunt cones that I like, and then like I said, like I don't know what strain I want
Yeah.
until I start
Smell
going
it.
through my collection and finding the
Yeah.
one that I need that day, so I can make them fresh rather than, buying pre-made ones.
Yeah, and I think, like, I know when I was at the Unicorn Cup, we had like I think 8 or 9 jars, and somebody, she wasn't sure what she wanted to smoke, so I cracked each one open, and okay, see how this one smells to you. And we found two that really appealed to her. And actually, she ended up growing the strain of the one that was the most, one that really gave her a, I guess, the fuzzy feeling inside. But when she smoked that, you could just see the stress and anxiety just melt from that young lady. And it was a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, I've taught this method. I used to run canatherapy sessions, which was sessions with new consumers. And we meet once a month, just free, just talk about consumption. Like, what questions do you have? What are you up to? What do you think? Like, what do you need? And, teaching this method to a few people now, and it was, for them, it was a little hard to wrap their head around it, right? Because they're like, well, how much, or how do I know? Like, how do I know which one should I take this one right now? And my one girlfriend, she started doing it, and it was almost immediate, right? Like, at night, it was a very specific strain that was like super appealing to her. The next morning, that strain smelled awful. It was like, it was totally, you didn't want it, right?
Yeah.
And when you start just listening to your body, it tells you what you need.
Yeah. And that's a thing, like we talk about a lot about energy and energy when you're growing with your plants, etc.
Yeah.
But it works in everything in our lives. And that energy tells us, our body will tell us what we want or what we need at those particular times, whether that's the food on our plate or the smoke that we're consuming. We just need to start to listen. And ladies are generally, they have that intuition, woman's intuition. Us guys, we got it too. It might be a little more ragged on the edges, but we have it too. We just have to start listening to our bodies. And I think that's the main thing with anybody looking for the medical side of cannabis, is really following what your nose tells you. It's going to tell you, it's not going to lead you astray.
Yeah. And I think too, like, exploring medical cannabis, can be scary, and it might not always be great. Like, and if you just accept that, you just accept that sometimes this is just not going to be a good time. You take too much, you choose the wrong strain, I don't know, you're in the wrong environment, and it just responds not the best way for you. And if you just accept that, then it won't be so scary.
Well, and it's hard to, like, especially when you're dealing with people my age, like in the 50s, 60s, and getting up there. And those are a lot of the people that need cannabis. They're not used to thinking in those ways. And they're used to, okay, this pill is going to do X, Y, and Z for me. And cannabis doesn't interact with our bodies that way. And it's really hard for them to understand it. That's where I think it's beautiful that you're having these meetings with people. Are those meetings still going on? Is there a place that we can send people?
You can definitely send them to me. I love talking about this stuff. I haven't been hosting them in person in a long time. Well, COVID, that was a thing. And but
Send them to Instagram.
Yeah, send them to Instagram. I'll respond to
go,
everybody. Guys. Yeah. But like this, I love talking about this. Like, this is my favorite thing, getting seniors to consume, like, transitioning, like, even my dad, starting him off with some very delectable chocolates and just saying, hey, just, try one an hour before bed, see how it goes.
And don't do two, Dad. Just do one.
Just do one, go to bed, see how it goes. And now it's like a regular thing, right? And and I, again, like, going through that time of, like, just talking to patients all day, every day, and a lot of them were seniors. Like, that was the big demographic, especially at that time period when doctors were a little nervous about prescribing, but to seniors was a little more open to the concept. and, you know, listening to people who just really had no idea, just no idea what to do, what to get, what how to try it, like when to take it, like, and having them, all those things that they, and helping just try it, you know, and then they call the next day and they're like, I got to knit, it was great, it didn't hurt,
Oh,
you know, and like
it didn't
those are,
hurt.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like if you can just make your quality of life better, then, you know, what's
And
the
that's what
harm?
it's really about. Like, you know, like that's where when I blew out my back, I didn't have a quality of life anymore. And with the use of cannabis, I got that back. And I never thought I was going to have it back. And it's like such a, it's almost like singing with the angels, you know, to have that back, and you can live again. You can take a walk and not, you know, suffer with every step. And these
Mm-hmm.
seniors, that's what they need. That's why I'm such, you know, so into the medical side and helping people, is because we need this for people.
Yeah, and again, like I think some people are a little overwhelmed with
Yeah.
the options, um the different types of products on the market, the different doses, the
Mhm.
different you know, all the different products, and then also just accessing medical cannabis. It's so different, at least here
Mhm.
in Canada, than, you know, a normal experience when they have to go get their prescriptions, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like even just accessing it, having that conversation with their doctor to feel like they're comfortable bringing it up, or their doctor's comfortable giving them the medical document that's necessary for them to go through it. That is a really big burden in terms of access for medical patients. And then,
Mhm.
you know, and then they might go to the recreational store to select something, which, you know, those products are amazing too, but there's a lot of them.
Yes.
And,
And there, a
you
lot of them
know,
are based on high THC and only
yeah,
high THC.
yeah, they're not, and you know, some product formats aren't as popular in the recreational market, such as soft gels or oils, which
Mhm.
are much more widely accessible in the medical space, which can be a lot more appealing to somebody who's starting out, because it's very easy to titrate, it's very easy to dose with that kind of
Mhm.
format over, you know, even edibles um or, and especially dried flower, or any of those formats, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I do think for many reasons, if you're interested in cannabis, always become a medical cannabis patient. Um, Even there's so many doctors that are willing to help you virtually,
Mhm.
and there's so many other benefits too. As a medical patient, I have rights that I can access more cannabis. I can carry more cannabis. I can, you know, it's part of my medical coverage at work. It's something I can write off of my taxes. Like there is those other benefits that, you
Mhm.
know, while it's not the most like conventional format to purchase it, there is a lot of really good benefits to go through the medical program in Canada. And, you know, comparing it to other medical programs in other countries that I deal with, like Canada is so far ahead in terms
Mhm.
of the product formats, the options, and all those kinds of things when it comes to medical cannabis.
Well, I think a lot of countries around the world are looking to Canada, you know, to for what we're doing, and they're going to build models off of what we're doing because they see if it's working or not. And that's where I think we have the opportunity to change the world in a lot of ways if we do this right.
Totally. Totally. And I think, yeah, like I think everybody is watching, and I do appreciate that.
Mhm.
And you know, and I do appreciate that the um there are things that we just wish were going faster, but
Oh yeah, just a
you
little
know,
faster.
you know, and like I appreciate that because we had such a strong legacy market before transitioning to
Mhm.
legalization, and I think there were some high expectations.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but in terms of where we've come in what, 4.5 years, like
Mhm.
pretty monumental compared to any other country in this realm, right?
Yes.
And you know, the selection that you have, the quality that you have, the safety, the, you know, the variety, the accessibility, like,
Mhm.
you know, going to the UK and talking to moms there that are trying to access medical cannabis, it's like so heartbreaking
Yes.
how difficult it is for them to have somebody to listen to them and fight for their access,
Mhm.
that it just, you know, it's so wonderful that we even have this option. And it's so um, widely accessible to
Well,
anybody
in
here.
Canada, yeah, and like there's you look at the documentaries that have been done on some of the strains, the CBD strains, and helping children with epilepsy.
Yeah,
Why this isn't available to every patient in the world, it really is something that is coming, but it just feels like it's a snail's pace. It's a half a step forward and three steps back,
yeah,
but we just got to keep at it and keep educating. I think that's the biggest thing in all of it,
yeah,
is to keep educating. That's one of the things you're doing. I know you're going to be speaking on some panels at the Grow Up at the
yeah,
end of this
yeah.
month. Talk a
Next
little bit
weekend.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
next
no,
weekend. Yeah.
next weekend. Yeah, it came up so fast. It's already the end of May. Yeah, so next weekend's Grow Up here in Edmonton, which is where very close to both Ken and myself.
Yep.
And I'm actually sitting on two panels. One is on international cannabis and
Okay.
exporting, getting cannabis in Canada to other countries.
Hmm.
You know, that's something I'm really passionate about because it is so, like I said, it's so new, it's so difficult. You're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and trying to do these kinds of things. So that's on Sunday. And then on Monday, I'm actually speaking with a few of my amazing friends, including Kala, Antoinette, Dragonfly Medicine, and we are going to be and Kylie, to talk about medical cannabis. You know, all things medical cannabis, depending on each of our own experiences and topics. And, you know, putting that at the forefront again, because I think with
Yeah.
legalization, it did get kind of pushed to the side a little bit in terms of
Mhm.
like its spotlight. And, you know, I think that that's still such a big purpose that people are using cannabis for. Even when you see the studies of, why are you going into a rec store to buy cannabis? Oh, I want something for my pain, or this or that or the other. They may not be true medical patients, but they are choosing to use cannabis for medical reasons.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's why, again, I encourage you to become a medical cannabis patient. You get your medical document, because, you know, that just tells the government how many people are actually using medical cannabis, and how many people are registered, and how many people are searching for those medical options when it comes to
Mhm.
cannabis, rather than just trying to make it more convenient and go through the rec store.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. The more data we can give to the government, letting them know that there's a lot more people that want the medical side. Um, can you ever see, like we were talking about smelling the cannabis in the right strains for our bodies? Can
Yeah,
you envision a time where we can go into a store and actually, have the jars where we can smell them and not just have to
I wish.
buy and try?
I miss that so much. I would go into the Village Bloomery and, when I lived in Vancouver, and, they'd have basically like the David's tea jars with the
Yeah.
little flip top lids, and you could smell every strain, and it was a deli, and, get a half ounce there, an ounce there. And, I've heard a lot of people that go into the States that some of the states actually operate that way,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really exciting to see them like transition some of maybe that food handling rules around like deli or whatever into that format. I hope to see it. I think there's a really big push from like companies like us and government on environmental practices with cannabis. And the challenge with the packaging regulations in terms of the limitations in terms of packaging options and the high waste. Do I see it in the short term? Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
Like I think it's, a very evolved format of our industry that we're not quite there yet. I think we have a lot of other hurdles to reach before we can start, sending kilo bags to the retail store for them to dispense and weigh out for consumers. But I do miss that quite a bit, because that was such a big factor. And I think it really, that experience, I didn't care what the THC was. I didn't care what the percentage was. It was like what strain called to me, which grower called to me, which, appearance, scent, strain, whatever. What was like the format that I could experience all those things in the store and make a selection based on all those other factors other than the only information the consumers have right now, which is what is the THC percentage, which I think most people, you see it all over Reddit, you see it all over Twitter, whatever. I think most people understand that that is not a good way to quantify good weed.
Not a good metric.
It's just it's just the only thing that's quantifiable at the moment to inform consumers. Like I much prefer a high terpene 18% over a 27% that, burns my lungs. But get the experience and the effects that I want more than the THC content. And I think that limiting attribute of trying to, when you go into that retail store and there's just so many strains and there's so many products. And I remember when legalization started, a lot of the stores had a really great format at trying to educate people. They're like, oh, this one's kind of the relaxing strains, and we color code them, and these are the, energetic, or the all these different general emotive terms to try and categorize things. And then it kind of got thrown out the window when that wasn't really resonating with the average consumer. And now it's just all about what's the percentage. And I don't want to buy my weed that way. That's just that's not how I want to select my product.
Well, I like what Super NASA is saying here. It's not the landrace strains disappeared. It's the knowledge of the land was lost.
Yeah. If you're going to grow up, or I don't know if there's videos, if they're sharing I know you're going to be there for media. One of my favorite people is going to be there, Ed Rosenthal. And he does a lot of pheno hunting and landrace hunting, and really focuses on the strain and the growing methods of that. And I could just listen to him for hours on that kind of topic.
I'm looking forward to meeting him. I've never had the opportunity to meet him, so I think that's going to be wonderful.
So but I think understanding where the cannabis plant comes from, I think that as a my other side thing that I do is I farm.
Yeah.
and I have cows and I have food and I grow my own food. And you know, there's a with the way that the cannabis plant, but the way that the cannabis is grown and the way the consumer sees it in the store, it creates that disconnect of
Mhm.
how is that plant grown? How
Mhm.
is it taken care of? Like what went into making this plant, right? And I think we had a lot more of that connection before in the legacy market. There was a lot more of those stories about where was that plant grown, how, like my friend Alana at Dabble Cannabis, she and her family have a farm on the island. They're a licensed producer. They grow outdoor sun grown, and they make these beautiful, beautiful live rosin dabs. And and all that you can tell in the
Yeah.
finished product, right?
There was
And
love put into it.
yeah, there was love and care, and there was thought
Mhm.
process behind it. But I think, you know, just that disconnect of where does the plant come from, who grew it, how, and all those details that I used to have are not as well known. And there's so many brands and there's so many different companies, and it's impossible to know all of that. It's impossible for a bud tender to know all of that. It's impossible for a consumer to
Yeah.
know all of that.
Well, and the
And
government's not allowing the bud testers to be allowed to test those strains. And, that an LP can't go in and say, well, test these and
mhm,
give them that information, where I think the grow up were actually allowed to do that. There's an
yeah,
area where they're allowing that. And I think that's going to be a
yeah,
big thing. But like we had a statement a little while ago. Basically, if there wasn't so many strains, you would have already smelled them all. And that's one of the things that's happening, is there's so much genetics being modified all the time.
yeah,
How can you tell? And they're not being modified for medical use, they're being modified again for high THC and to get a little bit of a flavor on the back end. I think, like, for myself, I would rather see anybody that's breeding for medical reasons and having a more balanced profile and cannabinoid profile. But that's not what the government is taxing. They're taxing THC, and that's where the money is.
yeah.
I think it's unfortunate myself.
Yeah, like at Aurora, one of the things that I've always loved about Aurora is we have a very strong plant science team. So we have a sub company
Mhm.
called OCO, and we have the biggest research facility in Canada or in the world on just breeding and genetics of cannabis.
Mhm.
And, this strain we just popped out from that facility, through a custom breeding program, looking at a variety of factors, like agricultural factors, like how does it
Mhm.
grow in the facility, how consistent is it, all those things that you need to have a commercial crop, but
Yeah.
also the terpene profile. But this one's actually a balanced strain, and
Really?
it's 8-9% CBD, 8-9% THC, I think. And I just picked it up because it just launched, and it's called Moonberry. Smells like berries.
Okay.
And it's so great to see the rewards of such a traditional agricultural breeding program lead to a one-to-one medicinal, I'd say medicinal first kind of strain, right? The one-to-one's a great strain for anybody at any time in most
Yeah.
cases, right? And it's not bred for the highest THC. It's bred for
Yeah.
the medical platform and an everyday consumer. And but also not maybe being, traditionally CBD is not the most especially here in Canada compared to, I don't know if most of your audience is in the US, but like in Canada, CBD, we don't breed very good CBD here. It's all for, hemp, or like seed or fiber, and no high THC. Well, not none, but very few high THC CBD hemp.
Yeah.
And so they all have this kind of CBD flavor to them that's not very appealing. So to have like an appealing strain that's also high in CBD and balanced with THC, you know, that's a really nice way to use a breeding program.
Yes,
You know,
I
that can
agree.
also be very commercially successful due to its agricultural crop requirements, such as height, yield, all those other things that you want.
Yeah, all the metrics that the boys with the suits on want to look at and go, okay, that's a good one. We want that one.
Right. And the harvesters, they want one, you know, they're all
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
height. They, you know, they don't have to change the lights in different areas of the room, and, you know,
yeah.
all those other things that just make it like an easier crop to grow. Right.
Hmm.
And, you know, for everybody.
Yeah.
And those are things I think that are hopefully going to be more involved in some sort of breeding programs. Is
Hmm.
not only is it the phenotype when it comes to the you know, percentage and terpene profiles and flavor profiles, but also the agricultural aspects of those, because
Yeah.
that's, I think, really as well where Canada can lead
Hmm.
in having genetics and crops that, you know, are sustainable at scale, which is one of the most challenging things with cannabis, right? Is to have something at scale that also performs well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Silly Lily's saying, we actually have a fairly balanced audience. 36% American, 36.6, and then 36.1 Canadian, and then
Oh wow,
around
that's
the
great.
world. So yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
like to be balanced, you know.
I love my balanced strains. I smoke those all day. They're my
Yep.
favorite.
Yep. So I don't know. I kind of halfway interrupted you when you were telling the name of that machine, but it was Banana something.
Yeah, Banana Bros, like Super Mario Bros.
Okay.
Banana Bros, and it's called the Otto.
Okay.
OTTO. It's fantastic.
And where it's Banana Bros website that you would go to find one.
Yeah, yeah, they have an Instagram with like all their equipment,
Oh,
but yeah, my partner also works in the cannabis space and product development, and he was talking with them and they sent him one, and yeah, this little thing, I probably would have never found it, but it is a lifesaver for me, because like I said, like I was telling you at our high tea event, which was,
yep,
we were also learning how to roll at this high tea event.
yep, yep.
You know, that was just never a skill I spent any time learning.
Okay, so it's a little Banana Bros, and then what?
It's the Banana Bros is the company. The
Mm-hmm.
product is called the OTTO, the Otto.
Okay, there you go, guys. And you know, if you're not a good
It is
roller or don't
spokesperson.
want to roll, it grinds and then rolls your
Mm-hmm.
joint for you, and it's like quick,
Yep.
simple. You know, yep. That's
Yep.
probably a machine I'd like to have because I'm actually fairly good at rolling joints.
Your joint
But
looked amazing. You were the first one out of like the 30 people there. Ken was like the first one done.
I've had a little bit of experience here and there. But yeah, it's something. It's just so quick and simple.
Yeah.
Especially like, okay, I have to run out to meet with somebody, and I want to have a couple of joints with me instead of
Yeah,
having to do the work.
totally.
Bang, bang, bang! It's done. And away you go, right?
Which is also why I love my electronic dab rig,
Mm,
because, you know, I was always really intimidated by a dab rig with the torch. Um, is it the right temperature? Is it too hot? Did I get it enough? Like an electronic dab rig, it's the same temperature every time.
yeah.
You know, I don't have to think about that. And, you know, why not? Why, like, I don't need to buy weed in an alleyway in a Ziploc bag anymore. Like, why not have fancy gadgets to consume it with?
And why not? If you can have them and use them, it's fantastic. But like,
Yeah,
I know I don't do dabs very often. And so I'm still on a little torch, and you know, I have a dabster that's supposed to register the temperature, because I would rather have it at a lower
okay, yeah,
temperature, right?
yeah.
can you regulate the temperature for the different things
The
you're
electronic
consuming?
one, it has like three
Yeah.
settings. It has like a low,
Okay.
medium, and high. So yeah, you can kind of adjust it, which I think would depend on the type of concentrate you're using, kind of
Yeah.
a temperature, which would be the most one for that. I prefer live rosin
Okay.
for my dabs. And so I just kind of keep it on the medium.
Right. Right. Have
Yeah.
you done much for like a hash or hookah pipes or anything like that?
Um, my girlfriend's Egyptian, and so she has a lot of
See?
yeah, hash hookahs. Yes, that
Yeah. Yeah.
is her format. I did a lot of hot knives in high school. But it's hash is not my first choice when it comes to consumption. That's not really the one that I draw towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the live rosin because I like how clear-headed I feel during
Mhm.
after my consumption. I feel quite clear, and I just feel, but like heightened.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. And that's what you're using it for. Because if that's what you need, you can get that from consuming that product in that way. And that's really
Exactly.
what it's all about for a medical patient, is finding that balance. Like if I've got to go to work and I've got to think, that's where a lot of the people in California in the Silicon Valley use Blue Dream, because that was the effect. They had the brain function, but they also have the relief at the same time.
Yeah, Blue Dream's such a great. We had a Blue Dream for a long time, and it was such a popular strain with new
Mhm.
consumers because it leaned a little higher on the sativa end, but not too far that you were maybe a little too stimulated or anxious
Yeah.
or anything like that. But it was still super high functioning strain. Blue Dream is always a good, anybody's Blue Dream I've tried, is kind of always has that same high functioning aspect to it. Um, but yeah, I love that strain.
I've actually never tried it. I've only grown the one strain. It was the first seeds I popped was New York Sour Diesel, and it
Yes,
gave me back my life, and I've still got a couple of pounds of it, because just of how I consume. I don't do a lot of smoking, but yeah,
right,
I can only consume through living soil because I have throat issues, and
right.
if it's any chemical residue in it, it burns my throat, and then I'm hacking, and it's not nice to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that's like I have a girlfriend, she's been growing for 10 plus years,
Mhm.
and the actual growing aspect is such a medicinal aspect for her too.
Yes. Yeah.
Like having these plants that are your babies and you need to take care of them, and they're a little high maintenance, and you need to watch them every day and take care of them. And when you're dealing with things like anxiety or depression, like that's a really
Hmm.
great way to feel needed, feel like you have to do these things, you have to get out, you have to take care of them, and really helps to create this connection with your plant
Hmm.
that knowing what your medicine is at the end of it. Typically when I grow outdoors, and then I'll make like topicals.
Okay.
That's like kind of my normal yearly process. I'll transition that into topicals, and then or make some ingestible oils or capsules
Hmm.
through just like outdoor autoflowers here. But
Okay.
this year we
Well, yeah, we
started.
can only do auto flowers here. It's really hard to finish a plant in northern
Mhm.
Alberta so autos are really helpful for that, right? But before
Yeah,
we
exactly.
I wanted to jump in. What are you doing with your hemp? Now you have a hemp farm. Are
Yeah,
you
we do have a hemp. Okay, we have a hemp license. We've been
okay?
on the farm like 3 years now. We've explored a few options. Actually, finding the right crop is quite challenging
Okay.
because we are in northern Alberta, and we wanted something high CBD. Most of the high CBD strains that are legal in Canada are photoperiod and not
Okay.
autoflowers. So that was not really that's not really an option, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not even worth buying the seeds to put them in the ground. Ideally, long term, what we were thinking about were research projects around hemp as a feed for
Okay.
livestock. And so hemp is actually illegal to feed to livestock right now, like in in formats. And so that but there's so much anecdotal research around animals getting fed hemp and just having a better better life, better
You
health,
have an endocannabinoid system
just
also.
better overall health. And
Yeah.
we practice permaculture, which involve things like rotational grazing and rotational crops and that sort of thing to have the land work for us and then regenerate the land as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've been talking about doing some research on that side of thing with livestock feed, but then also just hemp is such a good plant for regenerating soil and healing the soil and pulling out all the crap that's in there. There's a lot of really good studies on hemp as I can't remember the term, but it basically pulls out toxins and pollutants out of the land. And so using it kind of in rotation with some other forage crops to, improve soil health, which is our ultimate goal, is trying to improve the soil health from just traditional shitty grass to something that actually regenerates itself and creates a healthy soil.
Yeah. And without that healthy soil and the biology in the soil, and making the living soil, your plants don't grow as well because it's the biology that's the construction crew for the cells in your plant. So you have to have that biology, right?
And its ability to regenerate itself and heal itself, and also just create a better microenvironment for other animals and insects and mycorrhizae and all of those other things to create a more of an ecosystem.
That synergistic relationship that you really need with the microbiome, the plant, the animal, and us. When you combine that all together, you see some amazing shit happen.
Yeah, and like I'm really stoked for what we're doing here and how that's going to evolve and how we can incorporate hemp into doing that. In conjunction with, ideally, and at some point there's going to be a high CBD hemp that is an autoflower that we can grow here and use that for medicinal purposes.
Yeah. Well, when you do, I've never tried to smoke a high CBD flower. I'd be interested in trying some. I'd like to stop smoking cigarettes and transition to
that's
that,
huge in the US. That's huge because CBD can cross borders. So there's a lot of these CBD cigarettes made from hemp because down in the States, they have strains that are approved that are much higher in CBD content than here in Canada. And but there is a company that I really like in Ontario. I think it's called Whole Hemp CBD, I think is what they're called. And they produce CBD, just CBD flower, and sell that through the recreational channel. And, I've tried some of their stuff and it doesn't have that typical grassy CBD flavor to it. It actually has like terpenes and other flavors in it. And, I was really impressed with their product. If like from how they're sourcing it and howing it and the high CBD nature. Mine was barking at something outside, probably a coyote or something.
Yeah. Well, my wife is letting we've got we used to raise dogs. So we have the females upstairs and the boys
Oh,
downstairs with me. So she was putting the girls out, and of course the boys get all excited because the girls are hanging out, typical males. What can I say?
yeah, yeah. Just want to know what's going on.
Yep, yep. They want to go out and sniff after the girls go out.
Yeah.
I won't go there. I won't go there. So I was trolling through your IG, and I was wondering if those were cattle or yak because they were long haired.
Yeah,
I go,
so we have Angus and Highland cows. So Highland
okay,
cows are a long-haired cow with long horns. They're typical of the Scottish Highlands. They're a very hardy breed, which we like here because, for anybody who doesn't know, it does get to like -40 in the winter here. So they're a very hardy breed. They're very good at eating almost anything. They're not super picky.
okay.
So we have some Highland cows as well as some Angus cows as well. So yeah, we just had
What are
another
you
calf born
processing
this
the
week.
cattle for?
Sorry?
Are you processing the cattle for sale, or are they more
Yeah,
of a
so
pet?
we produce cattle for meat, our own, as well as, we go to the Beaumont Farmers Market every Thursday starting next week selling our beef, and soon
Cool.
we will also have chickens
Okay.
available as well. So we produce meat just for local, not at scale or anything like that, but just for ourselves, and so far just mostly our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually 99% carnivore, and the wife is moving that way. So maybe I'll have to talk to you. I could use some,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
good
For sure.
quality meat. you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite impressive. Like going back to that comment about like knowing the land and what you're growing and what you're consuming. Growing your own food is a whole nother aspect of really understanding
Yeah.
where does that come from, and how processed things are. We do
And
make jerky. We do. It
and
was the
I
most
that's
popular
one thing I
thing that we
live
had.
on that. Okay,
Yeah.
as I was a truck driver, I lived
Oh
on beef
yeah.
jerky. Right.
Yeah, we make our own beef jerky. We just started making dog treats. I
Uh
love my
oh.
dogs. So
Don't tell my
that
wife that. Okay. I'll have to
yeah.
buy dog treats more than beef jerky for myself. Okay, it'll be for the dogs. They're our babies. We don't have children, so they're our fur kids, right?
Yeah,
So
same, same. I have my chow chows, and they are if you follow me on Instagram, most of my pictures are my animals.
yeah, yeah. And it shows the love that's in your heart, because
Yeah.
anybody that loves animals that much is a very, very soulful person.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn a lot from animals.
Hmm. Yeah. So we're at the hour mark, young lady. I
Okay.
have one final question.
Okay.
Um, what would you have to say to the youth of today about the passion it takes to find their path in life?
Good question. My path did not go where I thought it was going to go.
Hmm.
You know, I probably went to school because I thought that that was what I was supposed to do.
Hmm.
And, I went to school with just kind of an idea of like, I like biology. I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm good at or what I like or what I'm going to
Hmm.
learn. And, I think it goes back to just listening to yourself and listening to what feels right, which is probably the right path, and not trying to force a path that
Hmm.
doesn't feel right for you. And, I think some of my best mentors really pushed me outside my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding those people around you that push you with love, not because they want you to, like they want something from you, but because they just want you to grow, and finding those people will help guide your path.
And that's an excellent answer, because a lot of people don't even think about, looking at themselves. It's like, okay, what's going to make me the most money, et cetera, and they don't follow a dream.
When I when I said, oh wow, cannabis is going to be legal, I want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And legal in the sense of like medical cannabis at the time. I picked up my bags and moved from Ontario to BC in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Had no idea what I was walking into. Had no idea where I was. I've never been to BC before. I had no idea,
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely had no thoughts that this was going to be like a huge career internationally, and that I would have these opportunities in front of me. I just really wanted to work in cannabis. That's all I wanted. And I think that keeps me focused on the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And and when I help patients, or I see patients,
Mm-hmm.
have an improvement in their life, then it was totally worth it.
Yes. And I think that's the key, is when you see somebody that was in pain and they're no longer in pain, it gives you that sense of fulfillment inside of yourself. And I feel that way when I'm helping somebody to learn a complex problem, and they finally get it, and you see that the light come on in their eyes, they have that aha moment, and that just gives me so much joy that I was able to help them to get there.
Yeah. There's a gift in a life of service for others.
Yes. Yeah.
That no money can fill.
Yeah. It's, I don't know how to explain it, but it's that energy, it's that frequency, it's the vibration that surrounds us. And you have a wondrous aura. When we met at the high tea, you just exude this how would I call it, a specialness about you in your energy. It was beautiful to see.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind.
And I look forward to seeing you at the Grow Up.
Yeah, I will see you next week. We'll do another one of these after on site live.
Yep.
And chat there. And yeah, Grow Ups next weekend. Start here in Edmonton. I'll be there Sunday, Monday. There's lots of parties going on too. So if you're local, come party with us.
Yeah. And hell, if you're not local, come party with us anyway.
Yeah, just come anyways. There's lots of parties. Yeah. We all need fun right now. So
Exactly. Well, Annaliese, thank you so much. You've been an absolutely wonderful guest with a lot of knowledge. That's why people seek you out all over the world to come and speak, and it's no wonder why.
Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
You bet. With that, guys, everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here. Without you guys, there wouldn't be any real reason to do this, and you guys are wonderful. Share it, like it, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need answers to questions. That's what we're here for. So with that, guys, we'll see you on next week's shows. We have a very special guest on Monday. You've heard Leighton Morrison talk about him a lot. Gerald Pollock, the gentleman that discovers water and how water works. There's a lot more there than what anybody really thought about. So you're not going to want to miss that. And of course, the OG's Power Hour with John Burfello, Mr. Toad, and now Dale Rook. that's a question and answer session all in itself, guys. So peace out, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.